Hi, my name is Rick Bloodworth. This is the Common Sense Christian, and today is Friday, so we're going to be talking about financial things, and specifically today we're going to be talking about why you need a plan, a financial plan. And when we talk about a financial plan, we're not necessarily talking about a budget, although a budget can and probably needs to be part of your financial plan. But what we're really talking about is the idea that you've got a direction for where you're going with your finances. As a Christian, I'm convinced that our finances are part of our stewardship to God. They're not our God. So we don't need to have our primary focus upon money, but we do need to decide how we're going to use money as a tool in our service to God. And part of that strategy in using our money will allow us to enjoy certain things in an appropriate way. And so let's talk about the need for a financial plan and why it's so important. Yesterday we looked at The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, and we looked at some statistics that came from another gentleman by the name of Richard Winwood. He had a book on time management, and he gave the results of a survey that were done some years ago that I believe are very applicable to us today, and they're very eye-opening as far as why a plan in our life, whether we're talking about finances or another area of our life, is so important. But this survey was a financial survey, and it was talking to a group of retired people, 100 retired people. And they came up with these percentages. Of this group, 3% were considered highly successful. They were independently wealthy. They could pretty much do what they wanted to now that they had retired. Another 10% were well-to-do. They were comfortable. And while they couldn't do everything they wanted to do, they could pretty much do the things that were most important to them because they had put themselves in a position to be able to do that. Well, after this first top 13%, the next 60% were just barely getting by. Though retired, they're still getting a retirement check or Social Security, or they're dipping into their savings. But this cumulative pool of funds that they have was really just enough to let them get by. They could live, but not as well as they could have and as they did before they retired. It was the equivalent to a working person living paycheck to paycheck. But then the rest of the group, just a little over 25%, they weren't getting by. They were, if not dead broke, they were close to it. And they were on the brink, just one big bill from disaster. And so keep those things in mind. 3% highly successful, 10% well-to-do or comfortable, 60% getting by, and the fourth group, a little over 25%, were just barely making it, if making it at all. Now, here is another side of this same survey. Of those surveyed, 3% they found had written goals that they had gone by in their lifetime. Another 10%, while their goals weren't in writing and their plans weren't in writing, they had them pretty well fixed in their mind, and they thought about these plans and these goals often. Another 60% really didn't have any goals or plans, but they had a loose idea of what they might be needing when they retired someday. And then the bottom part, just a little over 25%, well, they didn't have any plans at all. Throughout their working career, they had just lived week to week, day to day, and had pretty much spent whatever came in with no thought to the future. Now, think about how strongly this is correlated. I'm not suggesting that everybody that were in the top 3% of the well-to-do were the same 3% that had written goals, but it was a large percentage of that. There was a fairly good correlation. And so what does this say for you? And I believe what it says for you and I is if we will get a plan firmly in mind, if we will write it down, if we will consult with it, if we'll write down why we're doing this plan and why we're making these goals, and we keep that ever before us, or at least if we have it firmly in mind, then we're going to do pretty good. But if we just have a vague idea of where we want to go financially and where we want to be financially, or no idea at all, well, it's probably not going to work out very well for us. Earl Nightingale gave one of the best examples I've ever heard for the need for planning, and he did so with the example or the illustration of a ship leaving harbor. He said, imagine a ship that's leaving its harbor and going towards a specific and set destination. It's fueled, it's well crewed, it has a captain. They have the navigational devices that they need to get to the destination they're going to. And even though it may be very likely that not one of the crew or the captain have ever been to that specific destination before, since they have a map and a plan and the navigational tools to get there, 9,999 times out of 10,000, they're going to make that destination. And I want to say again, it doesn't matter if they've been there before or not, because they know how to get there. Now, take the same ship, fuel it, and start its engines. But this time, don't put a crew aboard. Don't have a captain on board. Just turn the ship on and let it go. Well, if it gets out of the harbor at all, it's probably going to drift at sea until it sinks, or it's going to run into a desert island somewhere and just become a derelict. Well, now think about your own life and the important things in life. And since we're talking about finances today, think about your finances and the need for a financial plan. If you don't have one, you're just like a ship adrift at sea. The engines may be going okay, but there's really nobody at the helm. There's nobody steering it because there's not a need to steer it because you don't have a destination in mind. And there are so many people, 85% plus, who essentially just go through life in that fashion when it comes to finances. They may be prudent at different times, and they may have had a budget at different times, and they may have even had a weak plan in mind, but never anything definite. And because of that, once they got to retirement, they didn't do very well. Well, how about you? Where are you at on the road to retirement? Are you just starting out, just out of high school or college? If so, let me encourage you to get a plan right now. As a matter of fact, it's better to do that when you're still a kid. So parents, this is for you with little kids. And I don't mean have them map out their future. I'm not talking about that at all. I'm just talking about teaching them about things that are financial. Teach them how to give on the first day of every week, and to give in a generous manner and a cheerful manner. Teach them how to save a part of their whatever money comes in, whether it's a gift from a grandparent or if they have an allowance where they've got chores and they're earning their allowance every week. And by the way, let me suggest very strongly to you parents that if you are giving your children an allowance, make sure that they have to do some work for it. And make sure that if they don't do that work, if they don't fulfill their end of the bargain, if they don't get their allowance that week. This is a critical way to train kids to be responsible with money. And then with the other things, with the purchases that they might have, when they're real little, help them with that. Talk through these purchases. Point out that if they spend all their money on this toy here, they're not going to have any money left. So do they really want this toy? It teaches them to be thoughtful and purposeful and prudent. And this will benefit them as they get older. And again, after they get out of high school and college, then they're already going to be a long way ahead of many of their peers who have never had any kind of financial training or financial guidance. They're not going to get it in most schools. Very few high schools and sadly very few colleges teach kids about finance. I have a finance degree, but very little of that degree was teaching about personal finances. we studied international money and banking and international trade and finances and things like that. And that's not very useful when it comes to setting a budget and setting savings goals and investment goals, long-term and short-term. And we all need things like that. So, let me say again, you need a plan. Otherwise, you're just going to be drifting along through life. Now, what if you're farther than that? What if you're already out of college, you're married or single, but you've already accumulated a lot of bills? Maybe you have a lot of credit card bills. You may have a mortgage. You may have a car payment or two. You may have a student loan or two. What can you do then? Especially if you find yourself just barely getting by, living from paycheck to paycheck and having to use the credit card to help ends meet before the month runs out after your money has. Well, this is all the more reason, and I believe it will be all the more compelling to you to help you see you need a plan. And if you don't have a financial plan now, it's not too late. Get one now and start doing something about your finances. Again, we're not talking about making your finances your God, but it is very important to make sure that your finances are handled prudently in the umbrella or in the auspice of your being a steward of God. You cannot be a good steward of God's resources if you don't have any plan for those resources, or if you just have a weak plan on what to do. So get you a plan, whether you're just starting out, whether you've been going for a while and you're already finding yourself over your head, get you a plan. Now, we've talked about specific plans and specific strategies in past videos, and if you're interested in that, I'd encourage you to look them up. There's a playlist for Financial Fridays, and on that playlist you'll find some very specific strategies. There's not any investment advice, specific investment advice, because every person's situation is different, but there are strategies that are universal that work very well. For example, if you make sure that out of the first of your paycheck you're giving something to God in keeping with your income, but you're giving something to God on the first day of every week, then you're going to be putting first things first. And then after you've done that, take the next part of your check and take some out for savings. You may not have more than a few dollars for that, but whatever you can carve it out and start saving. And then start spreading that savings out. You can do a number of things even with a small amount of money. You can split it up, I always recommend, into 3 categories. One is a category for paying down high interest rate debt. And so just take 1/3 of your savings and start paying off things like credit cards. If your credit card interest is typical, it's over 25% annually now. That means if you have $10,000 in credit card debt, that you're paying $2,500 a year every year just for interest. That's a little over $200 a month just for interest. That may not even be your minimum payment. So you may be making a minimum payment, but your balance is still going up even if you're not spending anything on those credit cards anymore. So take the first part of your savings or a part of your savings, maybe 1/3, and start paying down a little bit on your credit card every month. And then when you get in different things like gifts or an unexpected inheritance or an unexpected or expected tax return, whatever it is, take part of that and use it for paying down debt. And you'll instantly start having a savings on the interest that you're paying. Take another part of your savings. I would recommend 1/3 and just put it aside in cash or in some sort of a strategic pantry. And when I say a strategic pantry, I'm just saying buy things that you typically use, especially things that don't perish very quickly. And there's all sorts of things that you use every day, so you can figure out the types of things that we're talking about. And sometimes putting that in a strategic pantry is even more valuable than having it in cash savings. 1, because you cannot spend it, and 2, because inflation is is taking such a toll that what you buy today is effectively on sale as to what you would pay tomorrow. So about a third of your savings put into cash. You never know. You need an emergency fund because you are going to have emergencies, and you need something to be putting away for later on. You don't know. You could lose your job. You could get sick and be away from a paycheck for a while. It's just good to have a little bit something on hand so you can at least eat and survive. And then the other third of that savings I would put into something that's some kind of an investment, a prudent investment. If you're young, you can certainly invest in the stock market and stock market indexes. Even if the stock market goes down, if you put in a little bit each month and dollar cost average, over the long run, you'll probably make a fairly nice return. I've always invested precious metals to people, especially silver, because silver is so readily available. You can buy it by the ounce or even less. If even a dime made before 1964, it's only going to cost you about $2, and now you've got $2 worth of silver put away. And as inflation goes, typically silver will rise with that. If you have a little more money, you can put it into gold if you want to. But again, that's a great area for a third of your savings. But whatever you do, get some sort of a plan that includes a budget, that includes savings, and be strategic about your savings. But again, as far as your financial plan, your long-term plans, what you're trying to do is figure out where you want to be when you get to the point where you can no longer work, or at least no longer work and make as high of a salary as you do today. You might say, well, I'm going to be getting Social Security, but I can assure you Social Security isn't going to pay you much. My wife and I make less than $2,000 a month combined on Social Security. Can you get by on that? So you need some sort of a plan towards that day when you do retire, and you need to supplement things like Social Security. Maybe you've got a retirement plan with your business, and that's going to help. But whatever it is, have a little bit of forward thinking and make a plan for what you're going to need when you retire. And don't get too greedy on this. Don't make this an idol to where it supersedes your relationship with God. Use this plan as a part of your stewardship to God. He gives you resources. He expects you not only to be thankful for them and to enjoy them to a certain extent, but to use them in a prudent fashion. And part of that prudence is putting away a little bit for the future, because there is going to be a future, believe it or not. Even if you're 20 years old and that seems like a long way away, sure seemed like a long way away to me and my wife when we first got married at the age of 25, and yet that time has come. And we're really glad that we had a financial plan in mind. And I want to say very quickly, we made sure that financial plan was part of our stewardship to God. We've always tried to make sure that it never came in the place of God. And that way, whenever you have investments and they go down, well, that's okay. You're still trusting in God. But you're also still doing your part. And investments typically will go up if you invest prudently. You'll make some dumb ones through the years, and hopefully as you're young, you'll learn what's dumb and what's prudent. It's not a bad idea to go to those who have done well and ask them what was your secret. But again, you need a plan when it comes to finances. Not just your monthly budget so that you can pay bills, but something that is put aside for the future. Not just future needs, but future dreams. Maybe you'd like to get a cabin in the mountains, or maybe you'd like a little cottage on the beach somewhere. Well, you can have that as part of your financial plan. And you can be working towards something like that. And when you're working towards dreams, life really does become exciting. I know that on the spur of the moment, it's fun just to get your paycheck and blow every penny of it. But once every penny is gone, the excitement is gone as well. But when you have a dream and you have a plan to achieve that dream, well, that excitement is ever before you. You've got it in front of you. So, here's what I'd recommend. Whatever your financial dreams are, make a plan for that. Make goals for that. And I'd put them in writing. Be part of that 3%, not so that you can be rich, so rich you can just take it easy for the rest of your life, but so that you can get to a point where you can serve God even more efficiently than you're able to now, as you're limited by time. Put your goals in writing, or at least have them firmly in mind. The other option is to be like the other 85+% of people who, once they get to that point, they're just barely getting by, and they're nervous, and they get panicky. And every time a big bill comes up, it seems like the end of the world to them, and for some of them it nearly is, because they've got too much focus now on the physical things instead of on the spiritual. But if you'll have a financial plan, this will actually help you in your spiritual life, because now you're not so worried about getting by anymore. And now you can focus on the really important things. And as far as that goes, I would encourage you to start doing that now. Parents, teach your kids to start focusing on the spiritual right now. You're getting out of high school, college, start focusing on the spiritual if you haven't already. You're in trouble or you're in good shape and you're 30, 40, 50. Start focusing upon God. But as you do that, you're going to find that if you have a financial plan to go along with that as a secondary part of your life, that your life is going to be a lot better, and you're going to enjoy and find excitement every day you get up and you're working towards your goals, and you're going to be able to help others along the way because you've been prudent enough to have a little bit extra left over to help those who are truly in need that you'd like to help. Get yourself a plan. You need a plan. That's the message for today. I hope it gives you something to think about. I hope it's something that kind of piques your interest a little bit and maybe excites you a little bit as far as the possibilities that are out there if you were to get a plan. Because I believe the possibilities are unlimited. We just need to be a little more purposeful in making those possibilities a reality. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. We'll see you next time.